Nice. Thank you very much. I'm Alejandro Pino from Publimetro Colombia. Thank you for the nostalgic moment, I have to say. And
Thank you.
For that reason, I have to start with this question. Is this the movie that Andy saw in his childhood to become a Buzz Lightyear fan?
Yes, absolutely. We imagine that this is the movie he saw, maybe on a VCR, a VHS tape, and he wore that tape out, watching it over and over again. And then he was delighted to find that they made a 2D hand-drawn cartoon, and from that was a toy. And he was familiar with that from having watched the movie over and over again. But that toy was from a cartoon. That was the toy we know about from Toy Story. But this is the original movie on which that cartoon was based. So there's a generational change between the Buzz that we see in this film and the Buzz that we know from Toy Story.
Galyn, the Toy Story franchise wouldn't exist without you. How do you feel about being part of Lightyear after working with all these characters since the beginning?
Yeah, it's pretty special for me, for sure. I started my filmmaking career with Toy Story. So my entire filmmaking career has been sort of growing along with this Toy Story franchise. My favorite genre of film is sci-fi. And I never thought I would actually get to make a sci-fi film. So now 30 years later, I'm making sci-fi with Buzz and with great friends. And it feels like it's just a gift. It's really just a gift.
About that, during the movie, all the time I was thinking in Buck Rogers in 25th century.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Is this part of your inspiration?
Yes.
For a
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're the first person to say that.
Yes. I mean, which aspect? Are you specifically speaking of the Gil Gerard?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that lost in time aspect is something that is not just Buck Rogers. It's Flash Gordon. It's the Rip Van Winkle story. It's Ash from Army of Darkness and Evil Dead. It's very much that kind of fish out of water character. But certainly Buck Rogers was an influence in that Buck Rogers was something I could see over and over again every week. And there is a lot of odd. There's some neat things about Buck Rogers that are not that are influencing the movie a little bit. Partially, like the sense, the chunk of the ship design was of an era where, like Hawk's ship, there's no direct line to Lightyear, but there's a sense of chunk and a sense of substantial model making that certainly influenced the film. There was Star Wars. I saw Star Wars once in the theater, and then there was Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, and you could see those every week. And so I saw them more than I saw Star Wars growing up because that's what was available. But that feeling of it is certainly what you're getting.
Galyn, obviously Angus is a sci-fi fan like me. It's obvious. Are you a sci-fi fan?
Huge sci-fi fan. Yeah, I'm older than Angus. I grew up more with Doctor Who is my favorite show, and I was an avid sci-fi reader. So it just sci-fi was my thing. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. Sci-fi was like my closest taste to being an astronaut.
Angus, you were part of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins. What do you take from that story to this movie?
Well, I always saw that as being a story that was disconnected from this story. And I didn't, I was connected to I directed the opening to that the Pixar produced. But the tone of the show and this look of the show was always felt like a 2D cartoon offshoot that was meant to be softer than a much harder sci-fi movie. And so that was more like, I always thought of it like that's Ewoks compared to Return of the Jedi, or you know what I mean, like where that's droids compared to Empire Strikes Back. Like it's done differently, and that would be new adventures after that, but this was going to be a separate thing before that that would have different characters. So I wanted to be kind of a clean slate and utilize all of the canon elements mentioned in the Toy Story movies of what the Space Ranger world was, but use that as the canon and start from there, because there's too many other things to kind of follow in my mind.
In some way, this is a movie about growing up, and you both have been growing up in Pixar since the 90s.
Yeah.
How has been this process for you, Galyn?
Yeah, totally. That's a good way of putting it. We have grown up with Toy Story, with Pixar, in Pixar. We've gotten to see the abilities of the team mature over those years too, and what we can do now, storytelling wise, with the medium is. I mean, when we did Toy Story, toys were really the only thing we thought we could do. So it's grown so much, and the people have grown so much. It's really awesome. It's awesome to see what imagery we can make now that we could never have dreamed of making 30 years ago.
And Angus, for you?
Having worked at the studio for half my life, so much of this story of Lightyear is the story of working at Pixar. When Buzz goes on these missions and he goes away for 4 or 5 years, that's like working on a movie. And when you work on a movie so intensely, oftentimes you're not aware of changes in the world around you, or maybe you lose touch with friends, but then you come back after that time of working on a film and then people seem older. And it's like you're running through this time jump. So I noticed when I would go home to my home of Portland, Oregon, it seemed to change and no one seemed to notice that was living there. And so this is what inspired the time jumps of the movie, was making movies at Pixar and about trying to be an individual that was working really hard towards the goal, but recognizing ultimately that you can only do that when it's a collaborative medium. And this group of people is meant to symbolize the group of people necessary to make a movie. So it's very much a personal story in that way.
Of course. Galyn, you say no, but you are the mother of this franchise. You've been there since the beginning. What's next in Toy Story universe?
Oh, I have no idea. We've been heads down making this movie, and we haven't really come up for air to see like what's everybody else doing and what are we going to do next. And we'll worry about that next month.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for this movie.